at minimum, if you bet on the league, you're out for a year. Isaiah Rodgers, at some point, according to Adam Schefter, this week, will be handed down that suspension. But as an addendum to that report, the reports are also saying that there will be a handful of other players that will also be suspended for the full NFL season minimum. We don't know those names that have surfaced. Isaiah Rodgers surfaced within a 12-hour radius I'm trying to think, it was the day after. It may have been the night of the report that Rodgers and his agent released a statement. They just came out and said it was us. We copped to it. Like I did it, didn't mean to, or if he didn't mean to, didn't know it was against the policy. Well, since then, and prior to this suspension that's going to be handed down, according to Schefter, to multiple players, they have re-informed through the NFLPA, through agents, and through teams that have just wrapped up mini camps, the gambling policy for the league. Chad, we have talked at length about this, and whether or not the players understand it or not doesn't matter. It's like whether or not you meant to ingest a performance-enhancing drug because a batch of Tylenol was tainted within the drum that it was produced in. Doesn't matter. The PED is in your system. You're going to receive a suspension. Same here, because the apps, the companies, they're reporting back to the NFL who's doing it and how often, and betting on which sport, and specifically if it's the NFL, how often and how much. But the rules were clarified about a week and a half ago. Don't bet on the NFL. Don't gamble at your team facility while traveling for a road game or staying at a team hotel. That is considered NFL and team property. Don't have someone bet for you. Don't share team, quote, unquote, inside information with friends of yours that could then use that information to help their bet or take the underdog based on the fact they know that the other team, the big favorite, is not going to be with a great player on their roster. Don't enter a sports book during the NFL playing season, and don't play daily fantasy football. And that also, the addendum to that one is you can't even be in a fantasy football league where the payout or the prize is worth more than $250. They've written this out in 6 bullet points, but the main one is the top one. Don't bet on the NFL. And that means literally anything. Chad, I would delete the app. So if I'm an agent for any player, remove it from your phone. Don't have it. Don't have, an alias. Don't come up with a pen name. Don't have a buddy bet for you. Just don't do it, because it's not worth the penalty, which is the full NFL season if you bet on the league, and at least 6 games if you bet on anything else currently, which is also unfair based on the fact that it's legal and these guys can bet on the UFC fights if they want to, as if they were not in the NFL, if they were doing anything else. But here come more suspensions, and what we don't know yet, the superstar aspect of this. Calvin Ridley's really the biggest name. Jamison Williams got 6 games. Who are the other handful of players that Schefter is saying is also going to be suspended this week? And that could come down today, tomorrow, at some point by Friday.
It's an enormous distraction.
And how nervous are you if you're a general manager or a head coach right now?
Yeah, this is like COVID around the league. Remember we talk about the nerves with what happens when our star guy pops positive for a test and he's asymptomatic. He's not even sick, but he has to sit for 10 days or whatever it was at the time. That was the discussion around the NFL, around all sports during COVID, and now this has just become another huge distraction and possible negating factor for a team. I mean, it's been some guys who are going to have an impact on their team, no doubt about it, Jamison Williams being one of them, and some other guys that aren't as impactful for their teams, and
those guys were cut.
If there's no end in sight, then this is a huge issue around the league, and it's only going to get worse and worse, and it's something so stupid and trivial. I've been on this from the beginning. If I'm an agent, I'm just signing up guys who are willing to remove all apps from their phone while they're playing in the NFL. That's a good way to make sure you never violate something, even unknowingly, that's going to get you popped for a multi-game suspension and cost you a lot of money and cost you a chance to help your team. So I don't want any player to have it. I also, though, Hutton, like the common sense approach. I mean, my goodness, how often we talk about
that we
can just have a common sense approach of just don't bet on the NFL.
Yeah, that's it. Allow them to
just don't bet on the NFL.
Allow them to be an adult with anything else. If they're losing money, that's on them. It's no different than a guy going to casino after he gets paid in any other league. Barkley has tons of stories like that. Betting on the NFL, I understand why that rule is in place. Not just betting on your team, or even if you bet on your team to win. I understand the insider information of all of that. Betting on Major League Baseball or the UFC fight or anything else, let these guys do that and just don't get swallowed up by the minutia of what this ultimately could become, which is a 6-game suspension for something that's as trivial as betting on the undercard prior to a pay-per-view on a Saturday in the off season. The companies are digging. In some cases, they don't even have to because guys are using their name in their own account. And that tells me they're ignorant to the rule or the policy, which, again, doesn't really factor into what the NFL is going to do, which is suspend you. And unlike COVID, where it was a weekly deal or a daily deal, in this case, what Isaiah Rodgers did was last year, and now we're just finding out about it as we go into July. And that's why I would be extremely nervous and hesitant about anyone on my roster right now who may not have known the rule, may have done 1 or 2 bets, and Rodgers is saying he bet no more than $50 at a time. Craziness.
If I'm a super agent or if I'm any agent that can be somewhat selective about my clientele, and I tell one of my players, hey, here's my policy, you're not going to have any sports betting app on your phone while you're a player, and they are reluctant to say yes to that, my assumption is they have a problem. Maybe that's unfair, but that's my assumption. And I don't want to deal with them because this is becoming such a big issue across the league with guys being suspended. Because if you know you have a finite amount of time to make a killing, to make a ton of money, that your career is going to be over if you're lucky when you're 30 or your early 30s, but you're going to make a really good amount of money for that amount of time. And I tell you as your agent and representation, just wait until you're 32 and retire to download the FanDuel app and bet on games. If you can't do that for me, then I assume that you have a gambling problem.
Well, but with this is, again, I'm just looking at what Rodgers is. Rodgers is a 6th-round pick. He's making this year, he had a signing bonus of $36,000 and a base salary of $2.7. But prior to this year, he was making less than $1 million a season. But he's going to miss out on that money this year, the 4th year of his contract with the Colts, where he actually is going to get paid something compared to the other guys on the roster, where he's actually going to make some money in the account instead of making less than $1 million and being a day-to-day player. He was still on the roster and is still sticking around currently, but not for long, and he's losing out. It's a huge penalty for a guy who says he wasn't betting all that much, even though he bet over 100 times. And let me also throw this out there, just briefly. You can win a bet and then use the money that you won or use a credit that you won or used and then reapply that. I believe they're counting all of those bets too. I mean, why wouldn't they? So it doesn't necessarily have to be your money. It can be a credit from, signing up for an account. That's also counting against them here, and it's just not worth it.
I'm sitting around waiting for that other, not shoe, but enormous snow boot.
There's got to be one,
One quarterback. When Joe Burrow gets popped, or name the star quarterback, Josh Allen, anyone, Lamar Jackson, gets popped for a suspension for betting on a sports app on a non-NFL event because they were on a team bus or in a team hotel or wherever they were on team property. That's going to be a gigantic story. This is a big story as it is. That is going to be the jaw-dropping moment of the offseason with, wow, they suspended this guy for 6 games or 10 games or indefinitely or whatever it is. That will be a franchise-altering suspension if and when a quarterback gets popped. Hasn't happened yet. And you can go ahead and turn up your conspiracy theories if all these other players get nailed and not one starting quarterback gets hit as to who they're protecting and who they're not. But I am anxiously awaiting that happening, that a quarterback's going to get suspended.
Chad, I want to get your you to go through the swim lessons based on the drama we faced yesterday in just a moment. You mentioned the big stories, the big headlines. Where do you rank Zuckerberg and Musk right now in the feud that's back and forth, that's really being played out currently through UFC Hall of Famers, through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and others that are signing up or at least lobbying to be able to train Musk or Zuckerberg? I know Chael Sonnen claims that he got a call from Zuckerberg about wanting to do this at like UFC 300. Right now, UFC 290 is coming up July 8th. But, I mean, Elon Musk is training. Zuckerberg is training. And most recently, we've got video of Lex Fridman of the Lex Fridman podcast. He's, known for being a computer scientist. He does a hell of a podcast interviewing all kinds of people. But he's artificial intelligence expert, a Russian-American computer scientist. He does it all. But he's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And here is Fridman training with Elon Musk and with Zuckerberg. He's also been on the mat with Zuckerberg. But he said, hey, it was a blast, it was an honor, and that Musk was stronger than he expected based on some of the grappling that they did.
Well, it's a big story. I mean, if this thing happens, I agree with Dana White that it's going to be the most watched fight of all time. It's going to be bigger than right now. I think it is McGregor or Floyd Mayweather is the most watched fight ever. If Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, I chuckle as I even say it, actually get into a cage and fight each other, it's going to be an enormous pay-per-view event. Will it happen? I don't know. Is it a publicity stunt? I don't think so. I still think the odds of it actually happening are pretty low. I'm going to say less than 50% that it actually comes together. But it is a huge story. It's an entertaining story. And I love that this MIT scientist is the sparring partner of Elon Musk in the video.
He fascinates me more than the other two.
Well, and he even said it's great that these guys have taken an interest in martial arts training, but he said they're a lot more useful to everyone if they just train and don't actually get in a cage and fight each other. That it's a much better pursuit to not fight in doing this. So, they shouldn't be doing that.
So this is where I'm curious on the entire drama storyline and why I'm skeptical. If you're these two guys, you're the billionaires, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you go, if you're actually going to do this, why wouldn't you go the Jake Paul route instead of the UFC route, where Jake Paul rakes in the entire amount, meanwhile partnering with Dana only gets you a certain percentage based on.
Well, they're not trying to make money off of it. They want to give 100% of the proceeds to charity.
Well, people are going to make money off of this.
Yeah, but I mean, good for them. Like, Elon Musk has $230 billion. Like, this is about my disdain for Zuck. And they've already agreed that if they do it, they've said it all goes to charity. Every bit of it. I guess not all of it. Someone's going to make money for putting on the fight, and they're going to get their money back at least. But they want this to be 100% to charity. That whenever they do this, they're not going to make a dime off of it.
Yeah. But
again, we'll see. This all sounds great.
I know.
I'm reluctant to say that it's over a 50% chance of actually happening.
Yeah, I'm not buying it either. But you've got everyone coming out of the woodworks trying to train and be in the corner. You've got Tito Ortiz in one, and his arch rival, Chael Sonnen, is going with the opposite side on the same day.
Tito Ortiz, whose name will never be mentioned on the show again after that one slip-up by Hutton to mention his name after he bailed on us not once,
He's
but
not going to
twice.
be on our show, though.
Tito, you are blackballed from this show. Good luck on going on other shows, and best of luck next time you run for city council and you have to resign because you put out for unemployment when you were, in fact, employed. So good job, Tito. Way to go. Never coming back on this show, bub.
Team Chael. Team Chael Sonnen.
If St. Pierre wants to come on this show and talk about his training, I'm all for it. Literally any other UFC figure is welcome on these airwaves.
I also commend them for wanting to
waves.
do
I don't know if this air. Well, we're on radio
MMA
too.
To do the MMA version of this and not just the boxing aspect. That's the other thing. Musk looks good based on what I expected him to look like.
Musk looks
on the ground,
shockingly chiseled. Like even his facial features are very chiseled in this photo. For a guy who's known to have, he rocks the dad bod. He's really hardened himself up for this fight.